Hi everybody, welcome to the Speaker Training Webinar Series. I'm Topher Morrison. It's my pleasure to have you tune in today to get some great content for professional speaking. Now, these webinars are designed to give you a lot of great content with no obligation to buy anything, but yet an opportunity to at the end if you want to. And I recommend you stick around at the end because I've got a great sale on one of my best products that I think you're going to really enjoy if you're committed to becoming a professional speaker, or if you're already one, but you really want to hone your skills, develop some great business strategies and whatnot. Nonetheless, it's no obligation. You're going to get a lot of great content here over the next however long I'm on camera with you. So anyway, here's the thing. If you're at the office, I want you to tell everybody in your office you can't be disturbed. If you're back home, tell your family, your pets, throw the ball out the door and shut the door so the dog runs away. Tell them all you can't be disturbed. Get out a pen and paper. Get ready to take a lot of great notes because you're going to get some amazing negotiation skills right now that you'll be able to use when promoters give you those all too rare and all too desirable speaking gigs. So I'm going to share with you exactly how to do it in a way that allows you to walk away with some money in your pocket, because let's face it, you know what? The whole notion of it'll be great exposure. Listen, exposure doesn't pay bills. And that's the one thing that promoters love to promote out there. So, oh, it's going to give you a great exposure to get on my stage. You're going to be able to parlay that into a lot of business. Bull. You know what you'll be able to parlay that into? A lot of other people saying, yeah, well, come on to my stage. It'll give you a lot of great exposure. And you'll be able to parlay that into a lot of business. And before you know it, you're going to spend a whole year running around speaking for a bunch of people for free, waiting for those big exposures to happen that never really do. So you're going to get a lot of great content. I'm going to make sure that by the time you get done with this webinar, you know how to go in, negotiate like the best of them with promoters to make sure that you get paid a fair amount of money, and they also walk away with some change as well. I mean, you want them to make money because the more money they make, the more they book you. Makes sense, right? Okay. As we go through this webinar, I'm going to be playing with you some videos from a program called Bulletproof Speaker Training, which is an online speaker training membership program. And I figured rather than me repeat myself already, I'm just going to use some of the footage from there. So I'll set up the videos, we'll play them, and you're going to get a lot of great content. And by the way, it's a cool little bonus because most people watching those videos have to pay the monthly fee of $47 a month, but you get it for free because it's inside this webinar. All right, cool. So let me share with you a little bit about what inspired me to come up with this webinar. And the reason for that is because when I got started in this business, I didn't have anybody to show me the ropes. Like most people, I went through a train the trainer program, learned how to speak, and then I got sent out on my merry way with a little certificate saying I was a speaker. I didn't know how to get the business. We didn't cover any aspects of business development. We didn't talk about how to get on stage. We didn't talk about how to get a promoter to call you back. There was nothing like that. And you know what? As I looked, there was nothing like that out there. And I discovered, I think the reason for that is because most speakers, certainly back then, they didn't want to train in a bunch of speakers that could succeed because that would get in their way of getting on stage from other people as well. And by the way, I think that's still pretty predominant thing that's going on out there right now. So hopefully this is going to give you a whole new fresh insight. But basically my inspiration behind this is that when I started out, man, I didn't have anybody to show me the ropes, and I just wish I would have found somebody who knew the answers, who knew how to guide me and mentor me on all facets, not just how to get booked by promoters, but also how to negotiate the best rates. What techniques work best for corporations versus what techniques work best for network marketing agencies. Which techniques do you want to absolutely avoid on stage when you're speaking to a corporate environment versus a public environment? I didn't know about any of this stuff, and I kind of had to learn it on my own the hard way. And the hard way in the speaking business is getting booed off stage, or even worse, they just get up and walk out. I've had events where I've had people not show up at all. And it's because I didn't know how to sell tickets. So there's a lot of facets to the speaking business. I'd say getting booked by promoters is just one inside a whole array of things, from business strategies to what kind of software and hardware you need for your business to how do you stay healthy. I mean, there's so many things out there. And I really just wanted to create some webinars that were high content, high value, that would give you a taste of the type of quality you get when you seek out Topher Morrison Incorporated as a speaking training resource. All right, so having said that, I'll share with you that there were times when I first started out where I was just so grateful to get on stage, I didn't care if I got paid. I'd be calling somebody up and I'd say this. I'd say, hey, I think I've got some great content that would add a lot of value to your audience. Which, by the way, if you have not seen my webinar on how to get booked by promoters, really need to watch that one, okay? This webinar is all about how to negotiate with them once you get them to book you or agree to have you up on stage. But believe me, if you're still calling up promoters and you're saying crap like, hey, I've got some great information that I think would really add a lot of value to your audience, you're making the biggest mistake out there. So you got to sign up for that webinar as well. Trust me, just go to the website at tophermorrison.com, click on the speaker training webinar series, find the one that says how to get booked by promoters, click that button, sign up for it. It's free just like this one, and the two of them just work hand in glove. They work really, really well together. So, you know, I'd call these people up. I'd say all the crap that you're not supposed to say. Oh, I think you're going to get a lot of great value out of your program, you know. And they wouldn't book me. And then finally, I'd get the one that would go, okay, well, you know, what do you got? And I tell them what I could offer them. And they say, okay, great, but I'm not going to pay you. And I go, well, I have the speaking fee. And they go, what's your speaking fee? And I kind of humble and mumble through it. By the way, first rule of negotiating with a promoter, know your speaking fee, be worth your speaking fee, and never apologize for your speaking fee. Your speaking fee is never flexible, by the way. The moment you start to negotiate your speaking fees, the moment you start bringing them down for special deals, that's the moment you've impugned your integrity. That's the moment that you've ruined your full price speaking gigs for other promoters, because I got news for you. Promoters talk to other promoters. If you get booked by a promoter and your speaking fee, let's say, is $5,000 or $10,000 or hell, $50,000, but you give them a special price of $2,500 or $5,000 or $25,000. Guess what they're going to tell their promoter friends at other companies around? They're going to say, yeah, well, I got them for $2,500, so I'm sure you can get them for the same amount. And you will be stuck at that rate forever. So do not ever negotiate your rates. You have a speaking fee, you know what it's worth, and that's fine. Now, having said that, yeah, there may be times where you don't get paid your speaking fee because you waive it simply because you can make a lot more. But here's the thing, standard rule of thumb, have a price that you know your content is worth, that you know you're worth, and then never, ever speak for anything less than that. That doesn't mean you might get the speaking fee up front. You might actually waive that for a percentage of sales because you can make a lot more. Listen, at a speaking fee, like right now, at the current level, my speaking fee is $12,500. That does not include commissions, finder's fees, manager fees, all that kind of stuff. I have to have personally in my pocket $12,500. Here's the thing, if I can't get on stage to make $12,500, it's not worth it. But here's the thing, if I can make even more, it sure as hell is worth it. So if I can waive my speaking fee and then get up and sell my legacy speaker training at $20,000 a ticket, I'm happy to waive my fee, knowing that if I can get 2 or 3 of those sales, or 5 or 10 or 15 or whatever, it's a hell of a lot more profitable a day for me that way than if I'm just getting my speaking fee. All right? So, first thing, have your speaking fee, know what you're worth. How do you calculate what you're worth? Well, now we're getting into a little bit of detail. I do have a free speakers ebook, by the way. If you go to bulletproofspeaking.com, you can sign up for a free speakers ebook. And inside there, I give you some charts that will help you to identify exactly how much you need to charge per day in order for you to make a decent living. You know, the reality is you've got to look at all of your monthly expenses for your business. You've got to look at what salary you pull in from your business. And yes, you should be getting paid a salary. And then all of that has to be factored out into how many days you're speaking. So let's just say roughly, right? Let's just say you've got all your monthly expenses, including your salary. It's a one-person show, so you've only got one paycheck you got to pull, and you got your basic fees. Let's just say your hard cost expenses are, we'll just keep this simple for math in my head, right? Let's just say it's $10,000 a month, okay? So you know that if you need to spend $10,000 a month in your company in order for you to get a paycheck, anybody else to get a paycheck, whatever, in other words, the business to function, that means you got to make 120 grand a year. Well, let's say you average 2 speaking gigs a month. This is pretty simple math, right? Are you realizing what we do here? If you average 2 speaking gigs a month, well, then you'd better get 5 grand per speaking fee, per speaking gig. But now you got to be a little smart about this and realize something. December, tough to get speaking gigs. Yeah. In fact, even late November, early January, tough to get speaking gigs. So all of a sudden, even though you got to make 120 grand a year, you got about 2 months where you probably aren't going to get very many speaking gigs. So now all of a sudden it's not 2 a month, because now if you stick at $5,000 a month, you've got to find those other two somewhere. But you don't raise the speaking frequency, you raise the speaking fee. So then what you do is you just really divide 10 months worth of speaking fees, which of course would be two a month times 10, 20 events. You take 20 events, you divide that by 120,000. Whatever that fee is, that's your speaking fee. And it makes no sense to accept a gig with somebody where you're making less than that. Make sense? By the way, if you've heard, oh, you're going to get a lot of exposure by getting on my stage one too many times, you're already sick of it, you're going to love this video that I'm going to play for you here in a few moments, because I have the perfect comeback for anybody who tries telling you that exposure is worth more than money. In some situations, yes, but in most cases, no, doesn't happen. It's just not that way. All right, so first thing you need to know what your speaking fee is, and you need to be congruent about that. If you don't know what that is, man, you're going to have a hard time negotiating yourself, all right? So, number one, know your fee, stick with your fee, never do anything less than your fee. By the way, a lot of people will sit there and they'll go, but if I don't accept this deal, they're going to give it to somebody else. Yeah, so what? It makes no sense to accept a gig that you lose money on. Right? I'll talk more about that in the videos, but you're going to understand why. So be willing to walk away from a deal. It's not that big. It's not that big. It's not that great of a deal if you lose money when you get up on stage. So know what your fee is. Know what you're ready to do that. The second thing, by the way, that you absolutely have to have when you're negotiating with promoters, you got to have a written contract. Never, ever do anything on spoken word. Yeah, I know they're a promoter for personal development. They teach helping people to improve the quality of their lives. They've got such great hearts. They're not going to do the wrong thing. Okay, trust me. Listen, first off, you need to realize something and open your eyes. In the speaking world today, we have never seen a greater influx of thieves, scam artists, and con artists. They're all out there, all right? And so guess what? There's a lot of promoters that are the same thing. They're thieves, they're scams, they're con artists. Don't trust somebody. In business, listen, you guys have probably heard the biblical passage, trust in the Lord, but tie up your camel. Same type of a thing. Listen, trust the promoters, but get it in writing. I'll share with you a personal story. I had a speaker out in the UK one time want me to co-train his program because I was certified in some specific skill that he didn't have, and he was teaching it, so he needed to have a master trainer there that was certified. So I agreed to come out and speak with him and basically share the stage and co-train the program. And I have my traditional speaking contract, by the way, which I've paid about $3,000 to have my attorneys perfect. And I sent him the contract, and in the contract it specifies basic things like, number one, I've got to be provided by a minimum 3-star hotel. I'm going to have 3 meals a day reimbursed to me or billed to the hotel. The hotel that I'm staying at has to have a gym so I can get my workouts in. The internet fees are included in the package as well. And I think I even talk about, I think inside the contract there's a writer about like I can have protein shakes and bill those to him as well. Because I typically eat more than 3 meals a day, so I can have a meal, a shake, and something. So I specify everything in there that I want and that I need. I specify that the venue that they're booking me in has to be at the hotel room that I'm staying at has to be at the venue that we're actually doing the seminar, so I don't have to bother with taxis and running around, unless the venue that we're holding, of course, doesn't have hotel rooms and it has to be within a certain miles. All of this stuff is inside my contract. I've spent a lot of money getting my contract, by the way. And I sent him out the contract. He agreed to the terms. We had the speaking fee on there. And by the way, and inside the terms, one of the things is 50% paid up at the time of booking, 50% to be paid. 50% to be paid before I get on the flight. At least that's the way it is with international. US, I'm a little bit more lax on that one. So 50% to be paid up front at the time of booking, 50% must be paid before I get on the plane. He signed the contract. I got my 50% up front. Well, all is good. Very happy. We're getting closer and closer to the event. I notice I still haven't got the second half. So I keep calling the office. Hey guys, you know what? I haven't got my second half yet. I need to have that deposited before I get on the plane. And they keep putting it off and putting it off. We get to like 2 days before the event. And I go, listen guys, this is the last deadline. If you don't have that money in my bank account, I'm not getting on the plane. Why can't you just get on the plane? We'll just give you the money. We'll do the wire transfer and it'll be in your bank before you land. I'm like, because the contract's very clear. It said 50% at the time of booking, 50% before I get on the plane. If I don't have the money in my bank account, or at least proof that the transfer has been made, I'm not getting on the plane. And man, they were pissed. They were so pissed off. They couldn't believe that I was actually holding them to the standards by which they'd already agreed to, 6 months or 3 months prior to the event anyway. But I stuck to my guns, because that's what contracts are for. Listen, the moment you have somebody sign a contract and then you don't hold them accountable to the contract becomes null and void. If you're still willing to proceed and go forth, even though you know they're violating the contract, you've pretty much made that contract null and void and not worthwhile. And you'd have a hard time going to a court of law and saying, listen, I know that they were breaking it, but I was okay with it, but now I'm not okay with it. It doesn't work that way, all right? So they got pissed off finally. They hustled. They did the thing. They got the transfer. I don't think I had the money in my account, but it showed that it was a pending transfer. That was good enough for me. So I got on the plane. By the time I landed, though, the money was in my account. Now, here's what happens. I get in the car. They have somebody pick me up. We're heading out there, and the person who picked me up mentions that they have a really nice house where we're all staying. And I said, what do you mean where we're all staying? He says, oh, yeah, well, he booked a house, and so you and me and all of the other volunteers are staying at the house. And I said, no, that ain't going to happen. I said, in my contract, it states that I have to stay at the hotel. And he goes, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. And I go, okay, we'll get him on the phone. So I get him on the phone. Now, here's the thing. Because it's all written in contract and I've already been paid, who has the ability to negotiate harder here? I'm not going to give them their money back, right? I'm holding them to their contract. First off, I'm not going to live in a house with all of the volunteers. First off, I have to run a business back home in the U.S. when I'm out in London. So that means once that seminar is over, I need to get on the phone. I need to do business deals. I need to work with my assistants, my general manager. I've got to have confidential conversations, and I can't do that in a house where I've got volunteers. Secondly, it's a house full of volunteers. These people are going to be, they're not going to leave me alone. They're going to be asking me questions all the time. They're going to think it's so cool that they're hanging out with Topher, and all I'm going to do is just be alone and be in my room and be on my computer, which now I have to share the internet speed with all the other people in the house. So this is a nightmare already. Secondly, the fact is I like to go to the gym and work out. So I said, how am I going to work out? He says, well, we'll take you over to the place you can work out. I go, what? And then you take me all the way back so I can take a shower and then all the way back out? So this is a hassle. I go, just get the promoter on the phone. Get the promoter on the phone. I said, I'll tell you the thing. Hey, Andy, how you doing? Listen, the contract was pretty clear. It said that I had to stay at the venue, and now I've been told that I'm staying in a house with a bunch of people. That's not cool. I'm a grown-up. I don't need to share a room. I need to have my own hotel room. I need to run my own business outside of the event. Please just make me a hotel booking. Pretty simple, right? He gives me all these reasons why he can't. It's got to save the money, blah, blah. I said, listen, it's real clean. It's real clear. Either get me a hotel there, or I'm going to go home. It's real simple. I didn't have to get mad. I didn't have to yell. I just said, it's real clear. Just turn me around, take me back to the airport. It's no big deal. I already got paid. So then they say, okay, well, they go to book the hotel. So they made the reservations. I show up. They go, we need a credit card. I go, no, I'm not going to pay a credit card. In my contract, it says they pay for it. They don't reimburse me. So I said, no, I'm not going to give you my credit card. So we get them on the phone again. I go, yeah, now they're saying that I need to pay a credit card. Now, I know you guys might think I'm being a bit of a dickhead here, but let me tell you something. I've worked with enough promoters to know that if you give them an inch, they'll take a yard, and it's a lot harder to get reimbursed than you think it is, and I'm just not going to make that mistake. But I didn't have to get upset. I was super, super friendly both to the guy who picked me up and also to Andy on the phone. I was just like real nice to him. But I was very clear that they had to pay for it. And every single time they said they couldn't do something, I say, okay, no problem. I'll just have, I remember the guy's name. I said, I'll just have him turn me around and take me back to the airport. And I was ready to get back on the plane that day and head home. I already been paid. They were in breach of contract, not me. I was going to do everything in that contract that it said I would do and more. I expect them to at least do what's in the contract. Had I not got paid up front, they would have been able to hold that over me, and I would have been desperate, and then I would have maybe had to stay at the house. It would have been miserable. When you just have the contract that's laid out, and make sure it's a good contract, an ironclad contract, by the way. In fact, having said that, listen, if you subscribe to bulletproofspeaking.com and you get the free ebook, inside the ebook, it has my contract available. I think you have to fill out a little survey or something for it, but it's simple, and you get the contract. It's easy. So there you go. You can have my contract that I paid $3,000 for simply by just going there and signing up for the free ebook. Pretty simple. All right, now the next thing before we get into the techniques of negotiation that I want to share with you is the notion that you've got to know what you're worth beyond just your speaking fee. So in other words, you have to realize something. When the promoter is offering a gig for you, when they're giving you that opportunity to get up on their stage, they've already admitted they want you. At some level in their brain, they've already created an image of you on their stage doing what you do and them making money as a result of that. So because they've already essentially accepted that notion, I want you to realize something. You have the upper hand with regard to negotiation. I think most people, most speakers, when they get that promoter on the phone, they think that they have to bend over backward for that promoter because they're so hungry and so desperate for the deal, and that promoter can go to anyone. Listen, if you really think that the promoter can just say no to you and find somebody else to replace you, I'd have to question your level of belief in your message. The only people that I know that are totally okay with the notion that they can find any other speaker to replace them are speakers who are just hacks who have stole content from other speakers and have nothing original to say. So I know that may seem a little bit harsh if you're sitting there going, well, I don't know if I have any original to say, but you need to look into that. Have you built your whole speaking content based upon stuff that you got from other speakers at their seminars? If so, then you can be easily replaced. But if you have original content, if you have a way of looking at the world that nobody else does, and you have a way of delivering it that nobody else does, well then they can't go find somebody else. And the fact that they're offering you this gig on their stage, that's a reason for you to realize something. They want you. That says a lot. It always reminds me of, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie, I think it's called Hitch. It's got Will Smith in it. He's a dating coach. And he's coaching this guy on how to handle this date with this really beautiful woman. And he said something, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know the exact words, but he said something to the effect of, he says, you got to realize something. When you go out on that date, she already said yes. That means she likes you. Your job during the date is just to not screw it up. Okay? And you know what? In negotiating with promoters, it's essentially the same thing. By the time they start talking about the dollars or the pounds or the euros, listen, they've already said yes. They already like you. Your job now is just to not screw it up. Okay? So realize that you have to have a belief in your own self and know that you are irreplaceable and they can't just go find somebody else. Now, if you're sitting there kind of licking your wounds right now after what I just said, going, oh, I don't know if I have original content. Well, stick around. I'm going to share with you how to create original content. I'm going to share with you how you can develop the most amazing content, speak in a way which is authentic and it's totally unique to you, so that when you do go in to negotiate with them, you really have that belief inside. Because I'll tell you what, I'm absolutely certain that there's no speaker training on the planet that can do what I do in the way that I do it. Done. Period. There's a lot of speaker trainers out there, but if a promoter thinks they can find one as good as me, they got another thing coming. And by the way, I have no problem having them go find them. Because eventually, you know what they'll do? They'll come back to me. Even if I miss that gig, you know what? They're going to regret it. They're going to come back to me eventually. So I guess also maybe what I'm saying is don't be afraid to just walk away from the deal. All right, now before I play the video talking about the strategies for negotiation, I want to give you one last set of ground rules, if you will. And that is really straight from one of my best-selling products, Verbal Aikido. Verbal Aikido is probably the best sales training program, especially for people who hate sales, all right? If you've never checked it out, you probably would do yourself a favor. Before you go in and negotiate, you might want to get my product, Verbal Aikido. We sell the physical product for, I think, $48. We sell a download version for, I think, like $24 or something like that on my website. You can check that out. But I want to kind of give you a real quick rundown on how this works. You've got to realize that there are certain words inside the human mind that when they hear them, program them to feel a certain way or think a certain way. And some of the words do great things for negotiations, some of the words do bad things for negotiations. So I'm going to give you a couple words to get rid of in your dialogue and a couple of words to use in your dialogue, which will help you when communicating with the prospective promoter and get them to see things your way. See, here's the thing. What I find is that most people, when they negotiate with somebody, they have a cogent point and they have a very valid point, but they can't get the person to listen to their point because they're so stuck in themselves. So these are some techniques to help you get your promoter unstuck and open and receptive to what it is that you want to express to them. What are they? Well, the first thing that I want to recommend that you do is make sure that when you're listening to your promoter and they're giving you their reasons, like one of their big reasons for like wanting to do a 50-50 split, which is terrible, and I'm going to share with you why that's terrible here in a moment. But when they want to do a 50-50 split with you and not pay for any of your expenses, all right, one of the things they're going to say is, listen, I'm absorbing all the risk here. And so I have to take 50% because this is a guaranteed deal for you. I'm the one absorbing all the risk. All right? They're stuck in that. And they're not going to listen to any other thing until you can find some way to agree with them. So I'm going to suggest that you really take it to heart and listen to them and kind of try on their perspective and find out, okay, is there any validity to what they say? Because once you do that, you're going to be able to hone in on one of three things. What is that? You want to listen for something that you can either agree with, or that you can appreciate, or that you can respect. Never, ever try to listen for something that you can understand. The word to get out of your dialogue is understand. The word to use in your dialogue is either agree, appreciate, or respect. And just one of the three, by the way. If you use all three, you're going to be like patronizing them. That's kind of gross, right? Oh, I totally agree, respect, and appreciate what you're saying. That's not going to work. So you're going to get rid of the word understand, and then also you're going to get rid of a term that I just said there, which is what you're saying, or see what you're saying, or I can see where you're coming from. Anytime you say, I understand what you're saying, or I can see where you're coming from, or I see what you're saying, or any of that, really, in my opinion, and I can't psychologically prove this, but you know, go with me on this one. Generally, whenever you hear somebody say, I understand what you're saying, I see where you're coming from, whatever, really what they're doing is they're kind of saying to you, you know, I'm too lazy to listen to your point of view, so I'm going to throw out some bullshit right now, but I don't really mean it. Yeah, I see what you're saying. And then they tell you exactly the opposite. No, I understand what you're saying. And they tell you the exact opposite. It rarely makes you feel like you're being understood or that you're really being listened to. So get rid of those phrases and then start finding something inside their dialogue that you can appreciate, respect, or agree with. So for example, if a promoter tells you, for example, well, listen, I'm absorbing all the risk, man, I don't know about you, but I can appreciate that. I can appreciate the fact that they have a huge burden on their shoulders and they're putting up a lot of money up front for an event that may or may not go as planned, right? I can appreciate that. I can't agree with that, by the way. I cannot agree that they're absorbing all the risk, and you'll learn why in the video that we're going to play for you here in a second. I can respect the fact that they are absorbing risk, but not absorbing all of it. So for me, the thing there would be, man, I can appreciate the fact that you're absorbing a lot of risk. There's no question in my mind that for a promoter to have to put up all the money up front, there's a tremendous amount of risk involved there. Now they all of a sudden will feel a little bit listened to. They'll appreciate that. They'll go, okay, this person's smart, right? Now what you're going to do is after you find one specific thing in their conversation that you either appreciate, agree, or respect, follow it up with the word and then state your opinion. But do not follow it up with the word but. The reason for that is because the word but negates anything that was said before. Like if I say, hey, I really like you, but I want to be alone now, you're probably not going to feel very well liked. But if I were to say, hey, I really like you, and right now I really need to be alone, all of a sudden it sounds better, it feels better, and you might say, okay, well, I can still get that he likes me, but he just doesn't want to be around me right now. So get rid of the word but, use the word and. So that's, without going into great detail, you really should check out Verbal Aikido, by the way. That's not the purpose of selling you Verbal Aikido here, by the way, but you should check it out nonetheless. So find something you can appreciate, agree, or respect, and then state that to them so they know you're listening, and then follow up with the word and then state your opinion. What is that opinion? Well, it has everything to do with what's inside this video. So the first video I'm going to share with you now comes out of Bulletproof Speaker Training. It's one of the weekly lessons that we have inside this program. And it's going to be all about how to negotiate with promoters, and it's specifically about getting them to change their mindset. See, here's the thing. If a promoter feels that they're absorbing all the risk, for example, and that's the truth for them, then there's no point in negotiating anything else until you can get them to realize that maybe that's not as true as they think it is. This video is going to give you some strategies on how you can get your promoters to all of a sudden realize that there's more than one side to this coin. Enjoy. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Bulletproof Speaker Training. Today it's all about business, specifically negotiation. That's why I wore my pastel green shirt, because nothing is more powerful than pastel. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about how do you negotiate with promoters. You know, there has been over the past, 5 years, in what I consider to be an abuse of speakers from promoters. In that nowadays promoters, if you want to get up on their stage, they demand that you give them half of everything that you make while you're up on their stage. And I'm going to tell you why they think they're justified doing that, but I'm going to share with you something even more important, which is how do you make sure that you never have to pay 50%? Because in my opinion, I think it's asinine. In fact, I think it's a surefire sign that you're an amateur speaker if you willingly give somebody half of everything that you own. And so we're going to break this up into two pieces, really. Not because there's probably so much technical amount to it, but I want you to get the importance of how powerful simplistic concepts can be. So I'm going to split this up into two pieces. Today I want to address specifically, number one, how do you know when to accept and walk away from a deal? And how do you get the promoter to have a different perspective when they're offering you their percentages or their splits? So let's start with how do you know when you should walk away from a deal? Well, here's what I would say to you. If a promoter is offering you any type of a split, whether it's 50%, 40%, 30%, whatever it is, ask yourself this question. At the end of the year, do you have 30% of everything that you sell left over in the bank? Do you have 40% left over in the bank? Do you have 50% left over in the bank? If you are like me, and you're like most people that I know, you probably don't have 50% of all of your revenue stored away in the bank at the end. So let me ask you this. If you don't have 50% of your revenue left over in the bank at the end of the year, does it seem like it's a good deal to you to give someone half of your revenue just for getting up on stage? You know, if you make $100,000 or pounds or euros on stage and you have to give up 50,000 pounds of that, but the fact of the matter is you end up spending 55,000 or 60,000 pounds in operational costs just to be able to deliver the product that you've sold, how many of those seminars would you have to do in order to break even? It's pretty obvious. This is going down a hole. By the way, this is why a lot of speakers go broke. And it disgusts me that in this business, by the way, a lot of professional speakers will just simply file bankruptcy and then open up another company the next day. People that you know and respect, by the way, use this strategy a lot, and it kind of pisses me off. So, without me interjecting too much of my personal opinion here, how do you get them to give you a fair split so that you can keep your doors open and operate your business? All right, well, a couple of things. Number one, if you want to have any negotiating power whatsoever, you have to be a better speaker than 99% of the speakers that are out there. Now, if you've been watching my platform skills over this past however many months you've been watching this now, and you've been utilizing it, then I can promise you this, you're going to be better than 99% of the speakers that are out there. Because the majority of speakers nowadays are hacks. They're just imitating what they've heard from all of the other speakers out there that they admire, that they've gone to seminars to steal their content from. So, if you're using what you've been taught inside Bulletproof Speaker Training, then I'm not worried about your skill set. Let's just operate right now from the assumption that you are qualitatively a better speaker than 99% of the people that are out there. When you're there, it gives you negotiating power. Now, having said that, let's talk about the mentality of the promoter. The promoter's justification for thinking that they can take 50% of everything that you sell is one reason and one reason only. And here's what they'll tell you if you try to challenge them over the phone. They're going to say, well, listen, I'm going to take 50% of your revenue because I'm absorbing all the risk. This is a misnomer. And I'm okay with them saying this, by the way, because in fact, I kind of want them to say that as the reason for why they take half of everything. Because I'm going to use that later as a negotiation tactic for why they should never ask me for half of my sales. Now, we're going to get to that in part 2, but let's just talk right now about getting them to shift their perspective. Before I tell you how to negotiate that, let me tell you a personal story. This was a couple of years back, and this is in my ebook, by the way, so if you've read the story, now you're going to hear a little bit more of the details from it. A few years back, I had a promoter call me, wanted me to do an event out in London and someplace out in the Netherlands. And he initially opened up with a 50-50 split. By the way, that's not what we ended up doing at the end, and I'll maybe even go through on part 2 how I did that and what we ended up with. But he opened up with a 50-50 split. His reasons, he's absorbing all the risk. So then I simply asked him this question. I said, all right. I said, you're absorbing all the risk. I go, who's paying for the airfare? He says, well, you will. I said, okay, who's going to pay for my hotel? He says, you will. I said, who's going to pay for my food? He says, you will. I said, who's going to pay my speaking fee? He says, well, that'll be in the percentages and the splits. I'm not going to pay you to get on stage, but we're going to split everything up. And I said, all right. I go, so let me ask you this. Do you honestly think that you're absorbing all the risk if I have to pay for my airfare, pay for my hotel, pay for my food, and then show up on the hopes that you're going to put the same number of people in the audience that you propose that you will? He had, by the way, told me already that he was anticipating about 800 people in the audience. Now, I got to tell you this. With 800 people in the audience, paid, I'm happy to do a 50-50 split. But the big roll of the dice here is he going to get 800 people paying to go to this event? If that's the case, I'm cool with a 50-50 split because the sheer numbers alone will give me enough sales to be able to justify that type of a discount. However, he can't promise that. And if he can promise that, that gives me better negotiation power. So the first thing that I do is I simply say, listen, I say, Mr. Promoter or Mrs. Promoter, while I understand that you're absorbing a great deal of the risk, you need to understand that I'm also absorbing risk. I'm showing up to an event that there's no guarantee how many people are going to show up for. Now, if I show up at your event and you've done a bad job promoting, or maybe you did a great job promoting, but the weather is so good that day, nobody wants to go to the event, they just want to go enjoy the sun. Or maybe there's an economic crisis. Maybe there's a natural disaster that gets people stranded and they can't get to the event. There's a lot of things that are out of your control, but they would impact me as well. And for you to sit there and say you're absorbing all the risk while you want me to pay all my expenses is simply unfair. And I know you're not the kind of person who wants to do unfair business. And right now, to say that I've got to give you half of everything I earn because you're absorbing all the risk is clearly not true. There's a great deal of risk. By the way, barring the weather, barring natural disasters, barring your ability to promote, there's some other factors involved. Number one, I don't know who's going to be speaking before me or after me. And I've done this enough to know that, you know what, there are some speakers that if they get on before me, they will milk that audience for every penny they got. And then there's not that much for me to sell at the end. Furthermore, I've also been to events where there's less than scrupulous speakers after me who actually convince people in the audience to go return their product from other speakers to buy theirs. So there's so many variables here right now. Unless you want to let me be in control of picking all of your speakers so I feel safe about that, and unless you can guarantee me perfect weather, there's just too many variables. And as soon as you start bringing up all these variables to them to help them realize that in fact they are not absorbing all the risk, that you're still absorbing a great deal of the risk, that whole reason for I get half of your money because I absorb all the risk, it becomes null and void. All right, now there's something even more dangerous than accepting a 50-50 split. And that's accepting a zero split, meaning they don't give you anything. They want you to show up at your own cost, at your own expense, not pay you, and not let you sell. Yeah, there are promoters that demand that, okay? I'm telling you right now, just walk away from those deals. Now, here's what they're going to tell you. They're going to say, well, we're not going to pay you, but it's going to give you great exposure. All right, that phrase, it's going to give you a lot of exposure or great exposure. It's a bit like a unicorn or a Pegasus, all right? It sounds like a great idea, but I've yet to see any proof that it's real, all right? You know, for somebody to come up to you and say, listen, I want you to work for me for free and it's going to give you great exposure, that makes about as much sense as going up to a BMW dealership and saying, listen, I'd like you to give me a car for free because I'm absorbing all the risk. I mean, I have to fill the gas up, I have to change the oil, I have to pay for the maintenance, and I'm going to have to fix it if it gets damaged, and I'm going to have to pay for the insurance, and I have to find a place to cover it. So I'm really absorbing all the risk here. So I think you should give me your car for free because it's going to give you great exposure. I'm going to drive that car all around and people are going to see it and it's going to drive a lot of business your way. Would a BMW company ever give you a car, right? By the way, that's what I tell people who tell me it's going to give me great exposure. So anytime I get a promoter who says, well, it's just going to give you a lot of great exposure, that's my response. I go, well, you know, it's funny. If you went to a BMW dealership and you told them that you're going to drive their car and it's going to give them a lot of great exposure, as much as they'd love the exposure, they're not going to give you a free car. And I have to make a living, and I'm sure you can respect that. I will tell you that I've had a couple of creative promoters say or rebuke after I say that. They go, well, they give Tony Robbins a free car, to which my response is probably not, but even if they did, that's fine. If Tony Robbins is going to be on your stage and he's willing to endorse me and tell everybody to go to my program, I'll happily speak for free. And then that usually shuts that up. All right, so don't get caught into this lure of it's going to be great exposure. Now, if you're just a brand new speaker starting out, I get it. You might have to do some free events, but that's for practice. It's not for exposure, all right? The notion of getting exposure is a lie. All right. Now, the third thing I'm going to share with you on here, actually maybe this is the fourth, because the first one was know when to get out. You get out when the deal's not good and you just be willing to walk away. People always sit there and they go, yeah, but if I don't accept the deal, they're going to give the gig to somebody else. So what? Listen, if it's going to cost you money to do the gig, don't do the gig because you're going to be in the hole. It just makes no sense. So the first one is know when to get out. The second one is know how to change their perspective on who's absorbing all the risk. The third one is how to respond if they tell you it's going to be great exposure. And then the fourth one is an interesting concept, and that is something that I'm seeing happening now, which is even worse than the 50-50 splits. In fact, some speaker trainers, by the way, teach this as their secret for how they get up on these big stages in these big arenas and share the stage with big famous people. Listen, you want to get on stage with a big famous person? I'll share with you how to do it. Are you ready? Here's what they charge you to find out. You pay to get on stage. So these big events that you see where they've got like Richard Branson or Tony Robbins or some famous, politician, Bill Clinton or something like that. These events where those people are speaking and they want to get what they call the tier 3 speakers, they have to pay to get on stage. It's not because of their talent or their skill or anything. If you want to pay 50 grand, you can get up on their stage and then you have to give them half of everything that you make or at least another 50 grand, whichever's least. Or whichever more. I don't know how they phrase that. So in other words, it's going to cost you a minimum of 100,000 pounds or $100,000 to get up on stage with all those famous people to give you that exposure. That's a good deal if you're the kind of person who knows how to close the shit out of a room. If you're the kind of person who loves to slam them and jam them and get the mad rush to the back of the room and have a lot of people buy, and you're good at it, then by all means, buy your way onto those stages. It's a great move for some people. But if you're the kind of speaker who really, frankly, doesn't like the sales pitch, you don't like having to sell people things just because they're sitting in a room and that gives you the right, supposedly, to sell them, if that's your style where you're like, that's just not my thing, and you're not known as being a great closer, I'm going to tell you right now, I've seen a lot of people take advice from other speaker trainers that tell you how to do that, and they have gone broke because of that. They literally run their company 100,000 pounds in the hole. They don't make the sales, and their business is bankrupt before they ever have a chance to succeed. So a little bit of caution on that one. All right, that's part one. Part two, we're going to talk about how to negotiate them down. So how can you get it from a 50-50 split to a 60-40, 70-30, 80-20, and how can you get a speaker's fee on top of it as well? Pretty cool, all right? So that'll be in part two. But right now you want to stick around because on the next webisode, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about video cameras. I've had a lot of people sending me emails now asking me after we talked about the right audio programs to use or the right microphones. Now people are going, yeah, but what kind of cameras do I use? So I'm going to share with you what camera I'm using right now to videotape this. I'll flip it around and show you the behind the scenes, if you will. I'm going to share with you what cameras I like, which ones I don't like, what features you need to look out for with regard to your camcorder systems and whatnot. That'll all be in next week's webisode. So take care. Until next time, dare to dream and make each day an epic adventure. Bye for now. All right, so there you go. Hope you enjoyed that little clip. Now, let me tell you, before we get on to part two, I'm going to share with you this. Usually, after you get somebody like a promoter to shift their perspective and realize that in fact they're not actually absorbing all the risk, you usually get one of two types of promoters. And this is where I think really kind of also lets you know whether you want to continue to work with them or not as well. One type of promoter will be the kind that all of a sudden realizes they're not absorbing all the risk and they don't care. In other words, they're really coming from a place of greed. They still want half your money or more, and they're not willing to compensate you for any of your time or your effort or your flights or anything like that. I think you should ask yourself seriously if you want to do business with that type of a person. You know, the reality is that until we as speakers stand up to the abusive promoters and we do it collectively, they'll still continue to rule. So I'm hoping that enough people watch this webinar that are speakers that really start to get the message out to where we can realize that, listen, you don't have to let those people push you around. You don't have to unless you don't have anything valid to say which is unique. Then maybe you got to be a little bit desperate. So The other type of person is the person who realizes that they're not absorbing all the risk and therefore realizes that their demands for getting half of your pay all of a sudden now are not as really logical as they thought they were. And they'll usually say something to the effect of, well, what do you recommend then? I hadn't thought of that, Topher. What do you feel is fair? The moment you can get a promoter to say the phrase, what do you feel is fair, you've already won the deal. All right? Now here's the key. You've got to be a person of integrity as well to make sure that you offer them something which is fair. Just like I think it's abusive for a promoter to think they deserve half of your money, for crying out loud. Half? I also don't think that it's important, or I don't think it's fair for you to only give them 5% as well. So you kind of got to ask yourself that aspect as well. All right, now I'm going to play part 2 of the video for you right now, which really gets into the negotiation. Like, how do you get the split from 50-50 down to 60-40, 70-30, 80-20, or whatever's appropriate and fair. So I hope you'll like the second part to the video from our Bulletproof Speaker Training series. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Bulletproof Speaker Training. Today it is part 2 of how to negotiate with promoters. So if you remember from the last episode, we talked about how to get them to change their perspective to where they realize that in fact they're not the ones absorbing all the risk, you're absorbing quite a bit of risk. Now we need to talk about how do we negotiate them down to get a fair rate for you. And by the way, when I say negotiate them down for a fair rate, for you and for them as well, I mean, you don't want to get them so low that they can't make money either. You know, in any negotiation, the way I look at it, it's in your best interest to give them as much money as possible. It's in their best interest to give you as much money as possible, because if you both do that, then you're both going to be happy. So, how do we do this? Well, after we've got them to change their perspective and they understand, yes, you are absorbing some of the risk, the first thing to do is to start off with your speaking fee. You need to have a speaking fee. Biggest mistake people make is when a promoter says, how much would it cost to get you on stage? They go, well, you know, that depends upon, you know, how many people are there and whether or not you're going to pay for my expenses, I suppose. Listen, if you can't tell people what your rate is and look them in the eye and tell them that's the rate, you're not going to get any business, okay? So when people ask me what's it going to take to get me on stage, I say my speaking fee is $12.5. That's it. I don't need to say anything more than that. My speaking fee is $12.5. If they go $12.5 what? I go $12,500. That's it, and I just don't even apologize for it. And by the way, that's my current speaking fee. That's what I have to walk away with. If somebody's booking me, they better put their booking fees and their commissions and stuff on top of that as well. So sometimes people pay more, right? But I want to walk away with $12,500 when I get on somebody's stage for a minimum of 45 minutes. Anything more than that, well, now we got to negotiate even a higher rate perhaps. So I have a speaking fee of $12.5. Why do I have that speaking fee of $12.5? Because that's how much I have to make in order for me to have a respectable profit, pay all of my expenses for my general operational costs, and have a good life. That's it. You know, I mean, I've mathed it out. I've mapped out that's what it's worth to me, because it's usually not just 45 minutes. It's a day's flight out. It's speaking. It's a day's fly back. So it's 3 days out of my time. So those 3 days, I need to be making $12,500 in order for my company to have a respectable profit. It's it. It's that simple. So if I can't make a minimum of $12.5, it's not worth getting on, but I want to make a lot more, right? So if they're going to do this whole 50-50 split deal, listen, I'm okay doing a 50-50 split if I know the promoter, if I know the time of the year, I can accurately predict that we're good for weather, all those kind of things. I'm okay taking a chance and rolling the dice if I know they're a good promoter and I know they can put people in the room. Here's a great example. If T. Harv Eker called me, as he's done in the past, well, not him, but his company, and said, hey, we want you to come out at one of the Millionaire Mind intensives. We're not going to pay anything, but we'll give you a 50-50 split. I'd say done. That's it. That's all I'd have to say. Because A, I know that he packs the room full of people. B, I know that they're trained to buy like crazy. And C, I know that he's a man of his word. He's got integrity, and he pays out immediately. I mean, literally, this guy's got a hell of an operation. I mean, they know by the end of the day what your commissions are, and you get the check right away. So he's real quick. I'd have no problem with that. Dan Bradbury out in the UK, he wants to do a 50-50 split with me. I'd probably be happy to do that because I know that he can put people in the room. I know he's got integrity. I know he's going to pay me. Simple, right? But when you're working with a promoter you've never worked with, you can't rely on those types of things. In fact, remember the promoter I talked about in the last episode, he was saying that he would have 800 people paid for me to do my presentation with. So here's how that happened. Now here's how we did the negotiation, by the way. So my speaking fee, $12,500. He says, I'm not going to pay you $12,500. I said, that's fine. I go, how many people are going to be in the room? He goes, 800. By the way, I take that back. I don't think it was 800. I think it was 300 per meeting, and there were like 4 meetings, so it wasn't even 800. I don't even know where I'm getting that number, but I vaguely remember 300 was a magic number that had to be in the audience on each of those days, and I was doing 4 presentations, 1 a day for 4 days in a row, to a different audience, by the way. So basically what happens is he says, well, but we're going to have 300 people paid, and it's going to look great. Oh, I know where the 800 came from, by the way. I'll get to that in a second. So we're going to have 300 people at least, and they're all going to be paying, I think it was like £50 or something like that a month for the admission. So I said, great. I said, no problem. I go, listen, hey, if you can get 300 people in the room, I'm happy to do a 50-50 split. That's not a problem. I go, but if you have one less, so here's the negotiation strategy, right? Get them to commit to a number. They tell you, oh, we're going to have this many people. Is it free or are they paid? If it's a bunch of free people, by the way, let me tell you something. They don't buy as much. So he said 300 people paid. Cool. So once he said that, then I had a negotiation power. And I said, okay, cool. So if you get 300 people in the room and they've all paid, let me tell you something. That's a gem, not a problem. I'm happy to do a 50-50 split with you. And I still need my speaking fee. So if there is less than 300 people in the room, which I'm fine with as well, if there's $299 or below, all right, I don't care if it's just one person. And by the way, that's 300 people in the room when I'm speaking. That's not 300 people that sign up at the beginning of the day, because I could go on right after some loser, they could piss off the audience, and only 100 people come back. So it's 300 people in my room when I'm speaking, 50-50 split, no problem. He said, okay. I said, but if it's $299 or below, then it's not a 50-50 split. If it's $299 or below, at that point in time, I get my speaking fee up front. So whatever sales I do, I keep the first $12,500. Then after the first $12,500, then I'm happy to do a split with you. And I don't remember what those exact splits were, but I don't think they were 50-50 either. I'm glad I did that, by the way, because when I showed, first off, we were keeping in touch, and I said, how's it going? He goes, it's going great. We have, this is where the 800 number. He says, we got about 800 people signed up for the event. I'm like, man, all 4 days? He goes, all 4 days. I go, this is going to be great, right? So I get to the event. I show up the morning that I'm supposed to be speaking. Nobody around. This was at Earl's Court out in London, and that lobby was empty. I get in the elevator. I go up. First person I see is the promoter. He's got this pasty white look on his face, sweat's dripping all over. He doesn't look good. And I immediately know what happened, right? Oh, by the way, it was springtime, and it was the first sunny day in London. And let me tell you, man, you Brits, if you're watching, you guys are a fair-weathered group of people. Seminar, sunshine. Oh, take the sunshine. So he had everything go against him. There was also another huge event that started promoting after he already booked his, and they just kind of came in and just swiped up all the market. So it's a bad thing. I'm not exaggerating, by the way. In fact, you're looking at a picture of it right now. When I walked in the room, he had this thing set up for 800, and there was like 30 people in the room. Now, if I hadn't made that negotiation, I would have had to split 50-50 sales with just 30 people. As it was, I was able to at least speak to 30 people, do my presentation, and I kept all the sales, because we didn't even do 12,500 in sales with those 300 people. And by the way, the next 3 days were just as atrocious. But the fact that I had that little stipulation in place saved my ass when it came to paying for my flights and my hotel and all that stuff for 4 days, right? I still lost money, by the way, but I didn't lose, well, I shouldn't say I lost. I still didn't make what I deserved, but I didn't go in the hole. Yeah, does that make sense? So here's your strategy. Number one, get them to commit to a number. They always are quick to tell you how many people they're going to get in the room and why it's such great exposure for you. So let them run their mouth, let them talk, okay? And get them to commit to whatever number they say. Now, this is where you need to know your sales ratio. So as we've talked about in previous webisodes, by the way, knowing the difference between price per head, how much you'll make per head, all that stuff, you got to have those numbers readily and available. So when they say, we're going to get 200 people in the room, or we're going to get 300 or 3,000 or whatever, right? You know what that number is. You can do your math real quick and average out how much you're going to make. Once they've told you that magic number, If it's a number that's below your level of acceptability, you can either A, walk away from the deal, or just basically start right in and say, okay, well, that's not enough people to make it worthwhile for me to show up based upon my current close ratios. Or not close ratios, but dollar per head ratio. By doing that and splitting it with you 50-50, I'd only be making $6,000 or whatever, right? And that's just not enough. So I'm going to have to either say no, or we're going to have to negotiate something different. Well, what do you got? And then you can start to negotiate that way. If the number is acceptable to you, you lock in on that number. You say, you feel pretty good about that number? Oh, yeah, it's going to be no problem. We get those people all the time. Okay, cool. Well, here's the thing. As we mentioned before, this is not you absorbing all the risk. I'm absorbing some risk as well. So as long as you feel confident about that, let's just set this up where if you get those numbers in the room when I'm speaking, we're happy to do a 50-50 split. But if there's anything less, and I mean one less than that number that you just quoted me, then at that point in time, I get the first 20,000 in sales, or the first 5,000 in sales, or 3,000, or whatever it is that you want to negotiate. That's fine. But by God, make sure that you go in, you can save your butt. Because if he's going down or she's going down, don't let him take you with him. Does it make sense? All right. So, simple thing. Get them to talk about their number. Once they give that number, that's your magic number that you negotiate with. If it's high enough for you to where you're happy with 50-50, good. If it's not, then negotiate a 60-40, a 70-30, whatever gives you the dollar amount. You should always know how much you should statistically be able to make before you go in there based upon the best and the worst case scenario. All right? Hope that helps. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned. On the next webisode, we're going to talk about the coolest software that allows you to do a split screen interview with somebody on webcams. And it just edits it all perfectly, and it uses little to no memory in your computer. This thing is the sweetest program, and it's only $19. It's one of the coolest things you're going to have to be able to do long-distance interviews with people. I do it all the time. All of the videos that you've seen inside the Bulletproof Mentoring, where it's split camera and I'm talking to somebody, I've used this software. It's awesome! All right, so stick around. You're going to love that one. Until then, please take care, dare to dream, and make each day an epic adventure. Bye for now. All right, so there you go. Hopefully by now you've got a pretty good idea of how to negotiate yourself a better rate than the typical 50-50 splits with nothing up front. Having said that, this is usually the place where most people would probably have quite a few questions. So if you have any questions whatsoever, I do want to remind you, you've got a place to enter in your questions right there somewhere down here. I'm not exactly sure. In this general vicinity, there's a place for you to just simply enter in your email and what question you have. You might want to stick a phone number on there as well, by the way. Then I can just call you back if I got the time. If not, I'll respond back via email. I'm very accessible. I'm very approachable. I don't bite. Ask me any questions you got. Keep in mind, by the way, if I do make a phone call and I answer the question because it's that detailed, as a courtesy, I'd like you to also be willing to maybe look into the option of taking your training a little bit further, because the fact of the matter is, if you have questions for me now, maybe it's time for you to look into getting a deeper level of training. So I'd like to share with you real quickly how you can do that and how you can also get one of my best-selling products, The Mental Game of Life, Bulletproof Strategies to Crush the Competition, which sells in DVD format for over $700, absolutely free, right here, right now. So what I'd like to share with you right now is an opportunity for you to take that question that you might have, or the one that you didn't even type in there, and ask it as many times as you like, come up with as many questions you have, and hang out with me for an entire year. If you feel like you've got some value out of this webinar, then hopefully I'm the kind of person that you'd like to get more advice from. And if that's the case, well, I have a program called Legacy. Now, I'm not really trying to sell Legacy here today, but I do want to at least mention it for you. Legacy is by far and away the end-all, be-all, ultimate speaker training program out there. Even if you've already been trained by other people as professional speaking, but you've kind of been left wondering how the hell do you get your business up and running, this is the program, because we not only focus on platform skills, but we also focus on the key aspects which make you a great professional speaker of tomorrow, which in my opinion, there's really 5 main skills. There's professional speaking to a live audience, like platform skills to a live audience. There's platform skills to a virtual audience, like I'm doing right now. How do you connect with people on a camera? There are interviewing skills when you've got a guest and you're trying to find some kind of a JV opportunity where you're interviewing an expert in their field. There's interviewing skills when you're the guest and you're being interviewed. How do you make a powerful interview to where you can get booked on network television, for that matter? And then the 5th thing, oddly enough, is how do you read a teleprompter? to where it looks natural and normal and organic, like you're having a conversation, not like you're tracking the lines and reading something. So those are the 5 key areas that we talk about in Legacy. Plus, it's a 1-year mentoring program where we address all of the other business aspects. Plus, we customize for you a 1-year business plan. We create product for you. There's so much that really I can't even talk about it right now because that's not my point. That's not my purpose of actually talking about it, but I want to expose you to it. You can check it out at legacycertification.com. But the problem with Legacy that most people get faced with is that there's a $20,000 price tag to it. And so a lot of people don't feel that they have the $20,000 to invest in a training program even though they'd like to, they want to, but they just can't seem to find the resources. And in my opinion, if you can't find the resource for it, then you probably don't have what it takes to go through the program anyway. But we do have an alternate solution for you that I think is really a great program, and it's much more effective, especially if you're cost conscious and you're looking for that. Because the challenge, like I said, is that people can't afford Legacy. Well, here's the solution. The solution is the Bulletproof Speaker Training Program. This is a membership site designed specifically for professional speakers. And it's a membership designed specifically by professional speakers, which is really cool as well. So it has all of the things that really, as a professional speaker, if I could get trained, this is the stuff that I'd want to get. And it's all done virtually, online. It's a monthly membership. Here's the best way to look at it. Listen, if you've liked what you've heard today, and you're the kind of person who sits there and goes, you know, I'd like to take Topher out for dinner, maybe once a month, pick his brain on what it takes to succeed in the business of professional speaking, well then Bulletproof Speaking is for you because it's about the same price. And by the way, I'm a cheap date. I'm not even a Ruth Chris Steakhouse kind of guy. I'm just like an Outback Steakhouse kind of guy. So for $47 a month, you can literally have better access to me than you would at dinner, because if you took me to dinner, I'd just be focusing on the steak and the sweet potatoes. Here, you got my undivided attention. I'm the only person who manages the entire Bulletproof Speaker Training program. I log on to that thing about 3 to 4 times a day. I usually can answer your questions within about an hour to 2 hours, but no more than usually 24 hours go by before I even log into it. Hell, I even do it on the weekends because I love the program so much. So it's a great way to get instant access to me to ask me any questions you want. Plus, for the $47, you get so much. We've got main content. I think we got like 5 main pieces of content. The first one is what we call Speaker Secrets. Remember that speaking ebook that I told you about earlier in the webinar, which is free, by the way? That ebook, there's actually 2 versions. There's a free version and there's a paid version. What's the difference? Well, the free version that you can get at bulletproofspeaking.com, it's free. And inside it, they have a lot of great little tools like the speaker's contract, and I've got some management tools for seminars and all that stuff. All of those things are for sale at a very low price. I think the contract, by the way, is free, but everything else, anywhere from $4.95 upwards of $47. If you were to buy everything inside the free ebook, you'd be spending about $147, maybe about $150, $160. I'm not exactly sure the exact price. But for $47 a month, you could get the entire ebook for the span of the 3 months, and all of that stuff is free inside the speaker ebook, the paid version. So it pretty much saves you money if you just sign up for about 3 or 4 months and get those free products. You can get them all. So they're all free inside there. Now that doesn't mean that every single product inside the ebook is free, because I also endorse other programs and stuff that I have no ability to charge. But all the speaker related products, which we charge for in there, they're free inside the paid version at Bulletproof Speaking for the membership site. The next thing that we have, if you're already a speaker and you book venues, you're going to love this. Because if you do book venues, you realize right now, never book a venue sight unseen. You have to do an on-site inspection. Well, for over almost 500 hotels now worldwide, I've gone through and I've taken the venue review or the tour for you of the whole venue. And I've done this in all sorts of I've done it in Australia, I've done it in Canada, I've done it in the US, I've done it in the UK, I've done it in Singapore, I've done it in Indonesia, all over the world. And I have a weird life. Whenever I go into a new country or a new city, I run around and tour all of the hotels with my video camera, and I take literally a virtual tour of every hotel that I can get my hands on. So I can't guarantee I've done every hotel, but I can tell you I've done a lot of them. Especially if you're in London, man, I've smothered that whole place. Now, having said that, if you're in a city that I haven't reviewed yet, As a part of the Bulletproof Speaker Training Program, you can simply call me up or send me an email and say, what do you think of this hotel? And even though I haven't been there in person, I'll be able to give you a pretty good judgment on whether or not it's a good hotel based upon their websites, based upon a conversation I can have at their hotel. I'll do the legwork for you. So it's kind of a cool little feature as well. So if you book hotels, you're going to love Venue Review. The third thing that we have is a thing called Bulletproof Mentoring. Bulletproof Mentoring was actually a program that we created at the advice of some of our members, where each month you can submit a request to get mentored by me for 1 full hour. Now, I charge my mentoring sessions go, by the way, for $300 an hour when I can just do it at the office. So this is a great opportunity for you to get a $300 mentoring session, absolutely free. Just fill out the little thing, click on why you want to get mentored, and then I'll mentor you. And then what we do is we rebroadcast that for everybody else to watch and get the benefit from as well. And so you can not only get yourself mentored, but you can watch all of the other sessions as well. Each month we have a new client. Another section we have, which I really feel is the heart, the meat of the program, is what we call the Bulletproof videos. You've already seen 2 of these videos here today in how to negotiate with promoters. But every single week you get a video like that. And that video is focused either on business strategies or it's focused on gizmos and gadgets, like what is the software and the hardware that you need in order to have a great business. We also cover things like health and fitness. You know, I got to tell you, I've been a professional speaker for over 24 years. I've been traveling all over the world. And you know what? I'm still pretty healthy. I got to say, you know, at 43 years old, I'm feeling pretty fit. Haven't got fat. I think I've got some pretty good right to talk about how to stay healthy when you're living on the road. What restaurants to eat at, what exercises to do, all sorts of it from a mental and a physical side as well. We also cover things like platform skills, obviously, which is one of the more important ones. But these platform skills are not the typical platform skills that you're going to get at a speaker training, which talks about how to get people to raise their hand and jump up and down and do all those mind manipulation techniques that so many speakers are doing right now, which I find are deplorable. This is a way to take your level of speaking to a whole new level of sophistication and become a professional speaker that other professional speakers would want to endorse and recommend. Now, why would that be important? Well, join Bulletproof Speaker Training and I'll share with you because that's one of the best strategies for getting booked, okay? And then let's see here, what else do we have? Oh yeah, we've got the Legacy Mentoring as well. So for those clients who do go to my Legacy seminar and pay $20,000 to go to the program, we do bi-weekly mentoring sessions with them. And what we've done is we've taken 12 of the most powerful mentoring sessions we've ever had, and we post them inside Bulletproof as well. So each month, for the first 12 months, you'll be able to not participate into the mentoring sessions, but kind of be a fly on the wall and listen into their conversations, which is really cool. I mean, you can't even put a price tag on that. Well, actually you could, 20 grand, and you get it all included inside the program. Now, of course, we also have a bonus section. The bonus section I'm not going to talk about because you shouldn't sign up for what's in the bonus section because they're bonuses. But I will tell you that we have a lot of cool surprises for you in there. Believe me when I tell you, at $47 a month, you're going to be getting a minimum of $470 worth of value every single month inside this membership program. Now, here's where it gets really cool. For those of you who've paid attention to this webinar and you've stuck around, I want to reward you and thank you for that as well. So one of the things that I do in all of my webinars, this isn't unique to this one, but I want you to know it is special. And that's for anybody who sticks around and listens to the entire webinar, you have a unique opportunity. You don't have to sign up for $47 a month. I'm going to let you do it for a trial offer for the first month. Now, don't get excited, by the way. I'm not going to give it to you for free. I'm not going to give it to you for $1, but I am going to give it to you what I think is a pretty fair rate. That's $5 for the first month to try it out. That first month gives you full access, just like if you were paying $47 your first month, so it doesn't restrict you. And you're going to get a good idea. You're going to get 4 of the videos, 1 a week. You're going to get the venue review. You're going to have instant access to all of that. You'll get the first 4 chapters inside the ebook. You're going to get a lot of content in that first month for only $5. And if that's not enough, I also have included as a special bonus for anybody who signs up during this webinar, access to my entire DVD collection called The Mental Game of Life, Bulletproof Strategies to Crush the Competition. Listen, I sell this DVD program for over $700 on my website. We've uploaded all of these videos to the online membership portal, and you can watch them all for only $5. That's a pretty good deal. So even if you don't want to be a professional speaker, which I would question why you've been watching this whole thing, so I'm sure that you are, but even if you just wanted to watch it for those videos, that's a great deal. Try it out for $5. If you like it, You can stay a member and it'll just auto recharge on your credit card at $47 a month thereafter. You can cancel at any time. There is no obligation. You don't have to make a long-term commitment here. You can try it out for $5. You go again next month. If you like it, keep going. In fact, every month, essentially, you can just try it out. And at some point in time, if you find you don't like it anymore, you can just simply cancel. No harm, no foul. So there's my offer for you. I really hope you take advantage of this. Listen, if you are serious about becoming a speaker, you need this content because you can't get it anywhere else. It's original, it's unique, and you know what the fact is, nowadays more than ever, competition's tough. There has never been a greater level of supply and a lower level of demand for speakers. So what that means is that if you really want to succeed as a professional speaker, you have to do everything you can to distinguish yourself and make yourself stand out. One of the ways to do that is to become a member of Bulletproof Speaker Training. Here's another cool thing about the program, by the way. The cool thing about Bulletproof Speaker Training is that it's a subscription basis, but unlike a lot of subscriptions where if you don't read it or watch it, it expires, man, that's not how this works. This encourages you to stay a member for as long as you can, because even if you don't watch the videos and you just let a couple of months go by, it's no big deal. When you finally log on, all of the content that's been accruing for you is still waiting for you there. So you'll never have to worry about the whole use it or lose it policy. We don't do that. As long as you're a member of Bulletproof Speaker Training, you have access retroactively to everything that you have an entitlement to. So that's pretty cool as well. Listen, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to this webinar. I hope you got a lot of value. Once again, if you got questions, enter those questions into place. Send me an email. Feel free to give me a call. If you ever got any questions, I'm a phone call or an email away. It's been my pleasure. Thanks so much. Make sure you go check out the other webinars as well. We got a lot of them. We're always trying to come up with new ideas. If you got an idea for a webinar, put that in there as well. And who knows, maybe in the next month or so, you'll see that as a webinar as well. Until then, please take care, dare to dream, and make each day an epic adventure. Bye for now.